It's a new day on Deep Space Nine, and we're getting a visitor. Legate Tekeni Ghemor was a member of the movement on Cardassia for more power to the civilian government before that became a reality. He was also the target of a plot involving Kira being surgically altered to resemble his daughter and make him incriminate himself, a plot that resulted in him nearly sacrificing himself for her, which is why she wants his stay to be a pleasant one. He's also now one of the leading voices against Dominion takeover and Seagull Dukat's puppet leadership, so Kira's placing a lot of hope in him being the face of a resistance movement and trying to combat Dominion propaganda back on Cardassia. All of which isn't going to be possible on account of him dying. Yarim Fell syndrome is clearly a very unpleasant thing, as it's spread through a fair portion of his vital functions. Bashir says he's got some ideas to try, but doesn't look particularly hopeful. That prognosis becomes worse with a call from Seagull Dukat. Tekeni Ghemor is wanted by the new government for undisclosed bad things. Perhaps they haven't quite decided what he's going to be guilty of yet, but Seagull Dukat wanting him is enough reason for Sisko to make it clear that handing him over is unlikely to happen. Kira delivers the news of him being wanted as they're catching up with developments in their respective lives. That, says Tekeni, is because he knows where Seagull Dukat buried a number of his bodies, most likely literally as well as figuratively. In fact, Tekeni here knows a lot of juicy details about a lot of interesting things, and he'd like to share them with Kira. The Cardigans have a tradition called Shrital, where such secrets are passed on to family, so the dead can deliver a final fuck you to their enemies once they're gone. Tekeni has no family, though, the real version of the daughter Kira was made to resemble, most likely having been dead for some time, so Kira's the closest thing he's got. That's why he wants to give all those delicious secrets to her. Kira's apprehensive about the idea. She's pitching it as considering herself less qualified to ask questions than someone like Odo, but a flashback to her time during the occupation and an experience with her father being injured suggests there may be more to it than simple performance anxiety. Kira wants to do this alone, though whether that's her idea or Tekeni not wanting to share his secrets with anyone else isn't clear. Either way, Bashir's teaching her how to handle pain medication before he leaves, and his use of the phrase terminal condition makes it clear how well he thinks those treatment ideas of his will pan out. That's a fair assessment based on how unwell he's become in so short a time. Sharing his secrets is interrupted by the need for pain relief, but he refuses anything stronger as it would knock him out, and pissing on Seagull Dukat is more important to him. His suffering sends Kira on another flashback to her own injured father, the result of Cardigans coming to burn down their village, and memories of him begging her to stay with him. It's some time later when Tekeni finally falls unconscious and Kira stops for the day. Sisko's impressed by what she's learned so far. Tekeni wasn't exaggerating when he said he had plenty to share. Unfortunately, we may not have time for it all as Bashir calls Kira back to him. His treatments have stopped working, and Tekeni wants her to get as much data as possible. They should probably hurry up anyway, as Seagull Dukat's just arrived on a Jem'Hadar ship, pointing guns at us being his idea of opening negotiations. Sisko invites him onto the station anyway, and he arrives with Uncle Weyoun the Creepy, which is impressive, what with him getting murderized the last time we saw him. The Vorta are clones, you see, and the guy we saw die was the fourth of his line, which you could argue makes this lad fifth Uncle Weyoun, once removed. Anywho, Seagull Dukat's here with a different approach. He's now saying Tekeni Ghemor's case has been reviewed by their new judges, and he's completely innocent. The compassionate thing to do then would be to let him spend his last hours on his home soil. Sisko's far from convinced, so we go to ask the lad himself. Tekeni bluntly tells him to go do one. Taking a big old shit on Seagull Dukat is worth more to him than a week on Cardassia at best. Seagull Dukat expected as much, which is why he has more to offer, Tekeni's daughter. He says he knows where she is, and that gives Tekeni pause. Not for long, though, and he declines again, making it very clear that Seagull Dukat's choice of associates mean he's now even less trustworthy than he was before. The secrets continue through a montage of shots, all taking their toll on Kira. She's resting in her quarters when Seagull Dukat catches up with her. All his other attempts to stop the flow of information have failed, so now he's trying another path, telling Kira about Tekeni Ghemor's military career and his involvement in a massacre at a Bajoran monastery. In a surprising turn of events, Seagull Dukat is actually telling the truth. Kenny doesn't deny it, and even points out the monastery was hiding weapons for the resistance, though it's clear he's come to accept in the time since that Cardassia was in the wrong for the whole thing, and him with it. He didn't tell her for fear of her hatred, which has naturally made discovering the truth worse, and she leaves, as he calls after her. At least fifth Uncle Wayoon the Creepy is having some fun. Quark's Darbo table has been kind to him. He's there with Seagull Dukat when Sisko arrives to apologize for not being a good host. In fact, he's brought a bottle of Kanar to share with Seagull Dukat to apologize, though the latter declines. Just as well, really, because this bottle, which was just delivered to Kenny Ghemor, is very poisoned indeed. Fifth Uncle Wayoon is amused by all their posturing, then derails the whole thing by having a drink and agreeing that it is indeed highly toxic. Vorta are largely immune to such things apparently, a very useful attribute in their line of work, and one Sisko suggests they might need when associating with cardigans. Speaking of which, Kira is no longer associating with Tekeni, and Odo has a chat with her about the decision. He read the same military file as she did and noted Tekeni was 19 at the time of the massacre and one of some 400 troops sent there. Odo also thinks none of this really mattered to Kira, or she'd have looked it up before Seagull Dukat told her. Time for another flashback then, and Kira's dad is in a bad way. He's convinced he's dying, which is a shame as they've just found the troops responsible and Kira intends to go after them. To reality again, and Bashir's visiting Kira's quarters to let her know Tekeni hasn't got long left. He wants to see her, though Kira still doesn't want to go, and is abrupt with Bashir as he says this is a mistake. A final flashback shows her returning from a successful attack, the soldiers who shot her dad either killed or fleeing. The celebration is somewhat marred when she's told her dad has carked it, and did so calling for her. It's enough to make her accept that it's not Tekeni she's truly angry at, and she goes to stay with him before the end. Bashir's documenting the death with Kira, a process she finds disconcertingly brief. It's not the process she's upset about, of course, but rather the death itself. Partly, anyway, as she also tells Bashir about her own father snuffing it while she was off killing the people who attacked him, and, in so doing, admits she joined the attack because she didn't want to watch him die. At least she had the chance to get it right this time round. Seagull Dukat didn't get it right, but that's not going to stop him from saying he did. Tekeni Ghemor will be mourned as a hero of Cardassia, especially given that he recanted his opposition to the Dominion on his deathbed. That he did no such thing is a mere technicality. At least Seagull Dukat's denied the chance to create a song and dance with his state funeral, as that's already been taken care of. Tekeni Ghemor will rest next to Kira's other father, so we'll leave her to deal with mourning both new and old, until the next adventure. Knowing Major Kira Nerys is a dangerous business, it seems, the body count for those she's close to being 4 now by my count. First, Vedek Bareil becomes part man, part machine, all dead. Then Pharrell and Lupaza get exploded and vacuumed only a few months back. And now her adoptive father's gone and carked it as well. Thank the prophets there aren't any more minor characters to whom she's close who could also do a dead. We're in the realms of found family once more, something for which this channel has plenty of time. I've personally never quite understood why a coincidence of biology should apparently matter more than people whose company you actually enjoy. A cynical man might even say such social rules were largely created by bloody awful parents who realized it was an easier way to ensure contact with their kids than not being bloody awful. Anywho, Kira's fully on board with the concept herself and welcomes Tekeni Ghemor with open arms. Found family is a core theme of the episode, in fact, as we lean further into that later on by involving Kirayoshi. Just as Tekeni is technically not her dad, Kirayoshi is technically not her son. It doesn't matter to her, and she makes a point of introducing them to each other anyway. They're both as much a part of her family as anyone, something perhaps made all the stronger by having lost her biological family. Her father dead from a cardigan attack, her mother dead from malnutrition when she was 3, allegedly, and some brothers we've not heard about since mention of playing with them as children. How much do those past losses contribute to these bonds with others? Could there even be an aspect of resistance to it, a middle finger to the occupation? In a population oppressed for half a century, where random acts of violence and unexpected deaths are the norm, might the attitude of embracing adoptive family be a coping mechanism? Did the Cardigan attitude of family being more important than anything else act as an influence, Bajorans showing that found family is every bit as potent? Kira's just one of the focuses for this episode though, so let's have a look at some others. We have Seagull Dukat making his first post-takeover appearance, for example. He makes a big thing about still referring to himself as a gull during his chat with Cisco, though his words aren't quite on a par with his actions, are they? Those with keen eyes will note he's now wearing an embellishment on his right shoulder, gold wire wound around a thicker gold rod, and something entirely at odds with his claim of avoiding pretensions. He may have chosen to keep the title of Gull as a symbolic gesture, but it's very clear he has no intention of being mistaken for one. Another focus, then, is the return of Uncle Wayoon the Creepy, last seen dissolving on the business end of a Jem'Hadar weapon. Those making decisions behind the scenes saw what many of we viewers did, and agreed Jeffrey Combs makes an exceedingly good Vorta. So much so that the whole cloning thing was cooked up purely for the purpose of bringing him back. Deep Space Nine's roster of recurring characters is all the richer for his inclusion. His presence here gives us some idea of just how equal that Dominion partnership really is, too. The apparent leader of the entire Cardigan Union can't go off and exact a bit of revenge without the Dominion's appointed representative tagging along. Perhaps they wanted to see just how much adjustment the Cardigan mindset will require in order to fully assimilate into the Dominion. That could potentially tie into one of Fifth Uncle Wayoon the Creepy's actions as well, namely his decision to drink a glass of poison. On the surface, it's easy to discard as simply a flex of sorts, a way of showing that he's not so different from the other egos at the table. But it also has the potential to be received as far more a considered response for the purpose of putting Seagull Dukat in his place. By openly and knowingly stepping into a trap Seagull Dukat had laid for one of his enemies, by showing it's entirely toothless against the Vorta, Fifth Uncle Wayoon sends a message. All of these plots, all of these schemes, all of these silly little games of which your species are so proud, the Founders had already solved every single one of them before you were even born. Remember this in your dealings with us. He wasn't just flexing for himself, he was flexing for the entire Dominion. And for those of you still trying to keep up with our unofficial side quest, Kira's dad, played by Thomas Capacci, is a member of the Babylon 5 crossover club. He played a Narn called Tupari in the Season 1 episode, The Parliament of Dreams. End of episode.
I thought you were deathly opposed to teleporting.
You know, what with the skull for a face business and all.
I am, but I've been running the numbers and I reckon I'm now in the safe zone.
How do you figure that one out? Every time we buggered around with teleporting, it's gone tits up.
Yes, but that was before the guy who makes these paid for an actual artist to draw this character.
Yeah, actually, that's a fair point. I forgot he's a tight ass.
How would this thing even work? Teleporting's all kinds of weird.
True, but, if you recall, this is one we've done before. Back on Voyager, when I was still the onboard computer, we switched places during a teleporter accident.
Jesus Christ, that's a deep cut.
You're talking about... Bugger me, that were April in 2023. Have we really been doing this shit for over 2 years now?
Depressing, isn't it? He could have written a book in this time, and instead he's got a couple hundred of these credit skits.
I blame the patrons, they're the ones paying for it. Anyway, yeah, I remember I took a piss during a teleport.
And ended up in computer.
Exactly. If we repeat the procedure, we should be able to do the same here. Then we can get over to the GeoCity and find a way out somewhere else.
And even if it don't work, we still gotta take a piss on something. That's what you call a win-win. Oof.